If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property Experts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Diggins, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy.
Hello and welcome. Good to see returners back again, but also new listeners with us. Myself and Ben have been running this podcast for I think almost 3 years now, consistently Friday, day in, day out. And our goal as a business is to deliver £1 billion worth of property. And we'll be sharing that journey with you, the highs and lows, learnings and tips that you can hopefully grow your businesses to. And we like to do that with an ambitious, transparent and creative flair. These are things that have been told by others that have watched, said that we are like. So, hello, Ben.
Hello.
We shared this last week, and we did want to sort of re-erect it. I actually put out a LinkedIn post. We've gone sort of top to toe on our investor list and cleaned it up a little bit. If there's anyone out there listening that would be interested in just an initial conversation, potentially work with us from an investment perspective, please do let us know. We had 4 live investments. One of these is actually most likely as of this week being funded. So do make sure you reach out. It doesn't have to be these investments, but it could just be sharing an interest for a future project and to see how we work. So without further ado, it's the 27th of June for the podcast listeners. And as always, we've cherry picked some useful conversations or areas of business that we've focused on this week to share with you guys, to hopefully give you guys value to push your business forwards. So number one topic point is merger and acquisitions. That is looking at potentially buying other businesses. I suppose buildings could be in those businesses. It could be collaborating with businesses, so joint venturing with businesses. It could be selling a business. So we'll be talking about mergers and acquisitions. International. I don't know what is up with my wording. Internal team meet. I'm already now. Already been online for 2 hours this morning. Internal team meetings, how, why, and how often. This is super, super important. A good friend of ours, Dorian, he spends something like a ridiculous, like 60% of his time in internal meetings, which sounds like a lot. But that is the sort of method behind success as a business that doesn't need you. And we'll be talking about that later on. Progress update in Muswell Hill. We'll be sharing our 9 luxury flat development in North London, where that is at. How much of a hack a voice clip on WhatsApp really is. I know that everyone's probably thinking the cringy salesman when this first came out, but I've got a really good reason that you might not have thought of why it is so useful to be using in your day-to-day communications. Sounds like Ben's going to go on a bit of a rant again about building control. So let's see how
ready. Like every week, I'm ranting about building.
Yeah, I mean, not surprised. They're difficult. I'll on your rant, I'll tell you an email that I sent to Building Control this week as well, because it's kind of the same topic. YouTube channel growth. So, thanks to all of our listeners, and it's really starting to show now from an analytics perspective. So we'll be sharing the amount of people that listen to us and actually the growth that we've seen in just the last 2 weeks, which is absolutely crazy. We'll be sharing finished photos of an oral project. So excited to see those. And then just before the Q&A, as the last topic, I'll be talking about exit strategies, pivot. I've been on multiple panels with people that have been through multiple recessions, and every single time they say the best form of advice is have multiple exit strategies. So we'll be talking about the importance for projects to have exit strategies that are more than one. And then we'll do the Q&A, and then we'll let you get on with your weekends. Nice. Let's get cracking. M&A.
Yeah, this one came up this week, and hopefully it's sort of relevant to a lot of people that have businesses. I mean, predominantly service-based businesses, I guess, which Jack and I have, Aura Architecture, XP Surveys, both service-based businesses. And growing a business, for those that can probably relate to this, is bloody hard work. It's very slow, and it can be very, very painful. Getting a business off the ground, getting that branding sorted, starting to grow a client list and a network, and understanding how to build the right services into your business and what the business plan is. And all that stuff is exciting. Don't get me wrong. Starting a business can be, really exciting. You've got all the fun ahead of you and the trials and tribulations, but ultimately it's very slow and it's very difficult. So one of the ways in which, we've looked at growing our businesses, specifically XP Surveys over the last sort of year or so, is via mergers and acquisitions. It's a way to kind of supercharge the revenue, supercharge the profitability within your business by basically, buying into something else. When you do that, you often have value of scale. So for example, if you've got two businesses that are paying the same, £15,000 in PI cover, same, two marketing managers, one in each business, you've got all of these overheads in each business. By merging, you can strip out one set of those overheads and instantly increase your margins by doing so. So that's obviously a massive benefit to one of the benefits of merging into another company or buying another company. And that's what we've been looking at. We've been toying with our business model with XP Surveys for a while. You would have heard a couple of months ago that we've had our best start to 2025 since starting the business. It's been a really difficult journey for the first 3.5 years, I would say, and I would honestly say, having gone through that with Aura and XP Surveys, I think it takes that long to really start, getting traction with a business. Laying the right foundations, building the right team, getting your marketing and sales funnel sorted. And only now are we starting to see, you hear about the hockey stick approach, and we've talked about this before, where a lot of tech companies, for example, spend loads of money, and then they start to see revenue increase, and then you get back to a point where it's this hockey stick effect, where once you get everything right and you're running on all cylinders, that profitability, that scalability shoots exponentially up the curve. But for the first 2, 3, 4 years, you're basically losing money every month. It wasn't quite as bad as that with XP Surveys, but we are at a point now where we are chipping away at that loss. And by the end of this year, we definitely see a net profit position over that kind of 4.5 year period. But to supercharge the growth and get to where we want to be, we've talked about going nationwide all of the time. So we've been looking at opportunities to buy different surveying businesses within the rest of the UK. So we had a call this week with a company down in Devon. We've had a company over in Kent that we've discussed with in the past, up in is it Lancashire, I think it was. And that's a great opportunity for us to have and buy straight away into certain geographic locations within the UK, having effectively a ready-made satellite office for us to generate more business and grow as a business. The way that things are often valued from an M&A perspective is via a multiplier. You might have some tech companies or businesses that have very scalable, very repeatable income that will have much higher multiples, 10 times the net profit or revenue. Some people will do it on like revenue, some people do it on net margin, and to be honest, there's a whole science behind kind of how a business might be valued. Ultimately, someone's going to pay for what they think it's worth. So you might have one idea of what it's worth, and others might not at all. And that's certainly what we've found, especially with some smaller practices where it's more key man orientated. So if you are the owner operator of the business, you don't really have a business. You have yourself a profitable job. So ultimately, when we're looking at buying a company, we generally, and this is actually something that James Sinclair says a lot if you don't listen to James Sinclair, that he only really looks for businesses that generate £1 million worth of revenue, because at that level, the likelihood is that the company itself will have management in place. And you don't want to be buying yourself into a job. You want to be buying into a business that has management, that has leadership, that has even mid-levels of management, that has structure and processes that you can tap into and help push to the next level. If you're into M&A, I'd love to know down in the comments, because it's something that we want to know more about. So if you can help us on this journey, we would be appreciative. That's, I guess, like a whistle-stop tour in terms of the types of things we're looking at the moment. That's really not even scratched the surface of all the other things that we could talk about with M&A. But we've only got a certain amount of time on these lives. Hopefully that's sort of useful for those that are thinking about starting and scaling a business, maybe introducing a M&A strategy into your business plan instead of just trying to grow it either kind of bootstrapped or building your own business yourself, because it has huge amounts of benefits to grow by bolting on new businesses into yours. Anything else you wanted to talk about, Jack? You're on mute.
Yeah, just a couple of things I wanted to touch on. I mean, you covered most of it off of going in with a company with management, so you don't lose that key person. When my wife was selling her fitness studio in San Diego, it became very apparent that would the people actually train there if Kelly left, and she was essentially selling a space. So that is really, really, really key, that if someone's looking to exit, the business needs to have value in the business, and a really good book to read, which I recommended to one of our mentors this week, which is Built to Sell. So buying a business that's ready made and doesn't need a person in that particular business. And I'm sure a lot of you may have already been through that transition of when you're in the business every day and then you come out of it, and the people that the clients still want you in that business, and still being like, I want, Ben to do my architectural, management work, and so on and so forth. Other things I was just going to mention is a really, really cool thing about buying a business is a lot of people think that you just go in, go, yeah, I think it's worth £1 million. I want £1 million, shake your hand. You can actually buy businesses with the income that you're taking on. So you can go into a business, take the income and the profits, and over 5 years use those profits to buy it off the prerequisite owner. And that arrangement means that you're essentially buying it for nothing, no money into the project. You're just actually using that business as a vehicle. And then another reason Ben mentioned scalability and growth, or speed to scalability. There are other reasons that you might want to look at buying another business or taking on another business. A really common one in bigger players in the market is actually competition. So I've actually looked at famous UK mergers and acquisitions, and you've got Tesco bought Booker Group, so that's obviously retail, bought a wholesale company. They're indirect competition. Kraft acquired Cadbury. Coventry Building Society bought Co-op Bank. I've forgotten Tesco, and you've got Glaxo bought SmithKline, and they merged now the one of the largest pharmaceutical companies. So it's also to potentially buy out competition. Another one is branding. Ben talked about James Sinclair. He bought a ice cream company for the branding that it had been generating for decades. You can buy a company that's 100 years old and own it for a month, but still get that legacy that you're buying in. And that's called goodwill or branding goodwill. You could even be looking at the market. So you could just strip it with its sales and let the business go where it goes. You could also be hiring for the team. That's something that XP Surveys would be keen to do, take on a business that's already got a team of surveyors in, because it's difficult to get surveyors lined up. So there's many creative ways that you can think of taking on businesses. And what we love in our ecosystem is folding businesses into others. So what other types of potential businesses will we buy? Who knows? We've got a good, actually the guy that runs Reading Property Meet, Adam Vickers, he runs a letting company, and he's been acquiring other lettings businesses just for the lettings listings. So if he takes on 100 lettable properties, he's still got the central services under his own cost. He's tripling his revenue. And he can keep doing that, and it's a really good way of growth. Nice. So yeah,
there was actually you've sparked a few other things that will be useful for everyone in terms of things that might add value to your business. IP is one of them, and that's obviously from a tech startup perspective. That's one of the main things that people are buying when they're buying a tech platform. It's that IP and the potentially IT, the algorithms, the processes, the systems, all of that stuff that nobody else has. If you've trademarked something, if you've got rights to something that nobody else has, that is a game changer in the industry, that's obviously got huge value. Jack mentioned about basically what Adam's sort of doing is known as a roll up. So you're basically rolling up loads of smaller lettings agencies into one bigger one, which compresses the yield value of the asset, which increases the value of the asset. And that's similar to what we've done in our social housing portfolio. Ultimately, the idea was that you get to a certain scale whereby the bigger you get, the more a pension fund or a PE fund is likely to pay for your business, because they don't want to be doing deals that are 500 grand. They want to be doing deals that are 50 million. So they want to get a lot of money out the door very quickly. So if they can buy a big portfolio, a big business that's rolled loads of smaller ones up into it, and essentially what you're doing is then it's sort of aggregating that sale. You can do a roll up. Maybe look for businesses that have freehold interests. So people that maybe operate out of a freehold property, that freehold property might have added value from a property perspective, but they've also been running their business operationally out of it and generating margins and stuff that way. One of the key things that will enhance your business value is also margin. Ultimately, if you've got a high profit margin business, it's going to be way better for somebody coming in to buy it, and they are going to be offering you a lot more for it. Specifically, if you've got really high gross profit margins, because if you've got a business already that you're tapping into that new business, like I mentioned at the very start, when you are combining overheads, you're basically then you don't need to hold as many overheads in both businesses, so that net margin then increases massively because you've reduced those operation costs. So hopefully that was useful for people who are looking to grow their businesses via mergers and acquisitions. If you're doing it, let us know down below. We'd love to speak to you. So cool. Internal meetings.
Yeah, I brought this up because we've had quite a few. We've got quite a few projects coming to an end in Central Suites and also in XP, and it was also sort of bringing all the teams together. And it's sometimes difficult to ascertain how frequently you should be doing internal meetings to make it valuable, how we run them and document them, and who needs to attend. And we're massive believers that in the big corporate world, it's quite frequently that it's known that there's all these people in around a room just to look busy, and actually all those people are not required there. Where I feel like where we have quite a dynamic I suppose movement in our businesses, we only get the people that's relevant on that particular topic or that particular call to come on that call, and everyone isn't part of everything. So to give you an example of what internal meetings would look like, so in XP surveys, we have a team internal meeting with everyone in the team, including directors, to run through everything in the business that's changing or sort of progressing to where we need to be, as a weekly team meeting. We look at the jobs that are coming up, jobs that we've done, and that is a good example of almost like a check-in so that everyone's on the same page. Now, a weekly team meeting is really important in XP surveys because we might be doing 5 to 10 surveys in a week, whereas actually in Central Suites or maybe XP Property, weekly is way too frequently. Not really a lot changes in a week, most commonly, and actually everyone can go into their own sort of segregated groups, communicate about legals, exchanges, sales, construction, planning, whatever it may be, funding, and then that we sort of deviate into our own particular groups. So an internal meeting, like weekly team meetings, is judged on sort of the frequency of the business and what the business needs, not how frequently you want to necessarily check in. And you can always obviously increase the amount of frequency or reduce depending on how you feel it's going. Like for an example, over summer, you might actually say, look, let's leave it till next week or whatever it may be. So frequency is a really important thing to consider. What we like to do with all of our teams and businesses is kind of give them full exposure on all the business stuff as well, the sales and marketing, operations, finance, and the team, so that in those team meetings, they can understand the bigger picture and what's going on and what we're planning to be doing over the next period, which is also relevantly important. If you are visually watching this on a video channel, you will see this is the photo there is actually our quarterly review that we do with all the businesses, all under one roof, and go through everything in all the businesses, where we were, where we are, where we're going. And that quarterly kind of does more strategic, blue sky, take a step back, look at it from the outside, do a lot more visionary. And again, we have to quite cleverly make sure that they're sort of routinely done, frequent enough that new starters get a bit of an understanding of the bigger picture. People that have been, in the trenches digging and don't know where the sort of visionary point is and need to take a step back and go, actually, I have been working my ass off for a few months, but I understand, the bigger picture and what we're working towards. Because If a team member feels that there's an overweighted amount of work on them, that's not sustainable unless there's a vision and a cause for that. So there are other types of internal meetings that we do frequently. But as I mentioned, the frequency between different businesses, depending on how transactional they are, may vary. When I used to work in a sales office, we used to have a group team meeting every Monday, then a team meeting every morning, and then a one-to-one with, potentially someone in your team as a buddy up every day. So it all depends on sort of the ergonomics of the business and how that works. And then when it comes down to who attends, I believe if it impacts or they have impact on that particular project or that particular topic, they need to be part of it. But don't just bring people in because you like chatting to them and they, could have a look and see what it's like. During a training spell of people getting an understanding of all areas of the business, very different. It's really healthy for other team members to sit in on other team meetings while they're learning. But I would highly recommend cutting out the fat and making sure people that don't need to attend don't attend, because you just end up with, constantly people in meetings that they're not necessarily potentially needed for. So the way that we do that in Central Suites is we'll have a project meeting and then we'll roll into a business meeting straight after. But not everyone in the business meeting attends the project meeting because they don't really need to know about what structural drawings need to be drawn for an archway when they're managing the lettings of the business. So it's making sure the right people attend at the right time. And how to run these. So we typically allocate however long we need for that particular meeting. Definitely, I would recommend that if it is a short, sharp meeting, definitely try and have less time if possible, because you would just fill the time. It amazes me still how people just put in an hour for everything. And I'm like, I have it all the time where, meetings can be done in half an hour. So why allocate an hour? I would recommend putting the meeting in for 30 minutes, but then having a 30-minute buffer afterwards. The person that gets the invite knows that you've only got 30 minutes. But how we run through this is we often use our project management tool, whether that's Asana or Monday.com, and we go through the agendas and the notes of the business. But we have also now just gone back to the old school of taking, hard notes on a Word document, which is on a shared screen. We will go through all the business elements that we need to go through. And then we will then go through the project elements that we need to go through too. And then hopefully off the back of that, every individual has a really good I would say top scope of everything that's going on, but also their own to-do list of what they need to be achieving until the next weekly or bi-weekly or monthly team meeting. And essentially what you're doing as a director or a founder of a company is it's sometimes difficult to, I often find that the principal rule of delegation or allowing to delegate, sometimes delegation isn't as clean as you go do that task. But if you give people more exposure to what's going on, it gives them more opportunity to take on more responsibility naturally. And that's sometimes difficult as a business owner. You're thinking, I'm too busy, I can't sit in that meeting and talk about carpet design and this, that, and the other. But if you actually go in and give them more autonomy and decision-making power, you may find that being part of that internal meeting saves you hours throughout the week, and then has a positive impact on your diary too. So that's all I would say, that it's sometimes difficult to go, right, let's jump on an hour and just go through it. But off the back of that, you can sort of divvy up tasks. Everyone knows what they're doing. There's more clarity. The last thing a team member wants is to have a responsibility but not understand how they need to do that. So you always want to give them the tools so that they can just crack on and do it. Because you will find a lot of staff members are more just worried about whether they're doing the right thing than actually being able to, up for doing the right thing in itself.
Yes, yeah. If you're in a management role or a operational role, something that we discuss at the Property Entrepreneur is having quite a rigid structure during the week as to how you operate those meetings. So if you are managing and overseeing a team, on the Monday you might have your setup. So it's what's coming up in the week, what's the key things that need to get done. Middle of the week, you have a check-in. So a quick check-in, how's things going? Do you need any help? Is there anything that we need to provide for you in order to meet those targets that we set at the beginning of the month? And then a Friday sort of sign off of what have you achieved everything? If not, what's dragging into next week, and what do we need to do to jump straight on it on a Monday morning? So set up, check-in, sign off, I find that's quite a useful thing to do. Cool. Progress at Muswell Hill. So this week I ventured to Conley Hatch Lane in Muswell Hill. This is our site Maple Rise, which is 9 luxury flats. We've got two beds, 2 beds. Yeah, 2 beds, 5 1-beds, and no, 2 beds. I can't count. Yeah, 2 beds, 5 1-beds, and 2 3-beds. There you go. We've got a nice 3-bed penthouse at the top level, and you'll see in this picture on the right hand side, if you are visually watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, we've got the basement, which is starting to be tanked. That is waterproofing for sort of layman's terms. These egg crate type membrane systems get fixed to the walls. They will get fixed to the floors once the insulation is down, and that creates a watertight membrane all around the envelope of the basement, so that if there is any water ingress, then that water gets then taken away and drained down the back of the cavity membrane system, down into a drainage channel, and then out to a pump to get pumped away. Exciting to see this. It's been way too long, really, in terms of getting that basement finished. It's about 100 square meters of basement, which occupies like half of the front of the property. So quite a big feat of engineering. And you'd have seen over the last couple of months, if you tune in, some of the temporary steelwork and the props and everything that's gone in to kind of create the retaining walls and the slabs and all of that sort of structural and civil engineering that's gone into it. So to now see it as effectively an empty shell, and having discussed that the insulation, the tanking, and the floor screed will go in next week, it really does mean that we can start cracking on with that basement. So once that's done by the end of next week, we'll have partitions up the week thereafter. We'll start to see the spaces being formed, and ultimately it's then a fit out, and quite a clean fit out, because that basement shell has been formed. So yeah, that was exciting to see. And next time I go in probably a month's time, it will look even more different and very much more finished. So that's great. I wanted to add this photo here because it's quite another feat of engineering, which is the chimney retention at the front of the property. It's one of the last things that's been happening in that penthouse. Caused a lot of dust, caused a lot of nuisance. We had to get the scaffold up at the front to enable these works, which include a couple of Velux windows in the front roof slope as well. What you can see here is 2 kind of raking steels that follow the line of the roof. You've got basically some steel angles that have been bolted, have been welded to these channels, and then the brickwork has been cut into these steel channels basically to maintain the integrity of the chimney. We're in a conservation area. The chimneys were part of the planning process or the requirements of the planning officer that we didn't remove those chimneys in their entirety. So they obviously need to be supported structurally for the longer term. And this was the solution. So yeah, quite cool to see. Quite chunky steelwork, and the builder said, the less we say about how that was installed, the better. But it's in now, and it's looking good. And then we've got the bay windows, or the bays at the front elevation have now been created. So these were some old 1970s single story flat roof, horrible shantytown type extensions that have been added over the times. So we've demolished that, and then we've rebuilt this nice new yellow stock brick bay window on the left hand side and the right hand side. So yeah, things are progressing well. There's a few milestones that we've missed. The show home won't be delivered in the timeframes that I was hoping for, but we now have some samples on site, which is great. So all of the handles, the switches, the switch plates, and this from a sales perspective is really key. When people come onto site and start doing viewings and it's a shell like this, there's nothing for them to touch and feel and fall in love with in terms of the interior design. So having sample boards of the carpets, of the tiling, of the switch plates, the worktop, the kitchen cabinets, all of that stuff we've now got fixed to an MDF panel, so that when viewings happen, they can go on site, they can touch and feel all of those finishes, and hopefully fall in love with the development a lot more. So yeah, exciting to see progress there. And in a month's time, we will have significant improvement upstairs because the plastering is happening next week. Mist coat on the top 2 floors will happen over the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks, and we really now start to see the room start taking shape with the sort of whitewashed walls, and it will make a massive difference. So yeah, super excited. We keep plugging this because it's very useful. Xero is our accounting software, and for a 6-month time frame, you can get 90% off Xero using the referral link down in the description. There's a bit.ly link on screen as well. And we don't run a business without having Xero. It's a fantastic platform. It has an app where you can see all of your financial data. You can run off as many management reports as you want. So make sure that if you're starting a business or you haven't got a proper system in place right now and you're just using spreadsheets, get over to Xero and get your 90% off for the first 6 months. Voice clips on WhatsApp. I hate them.
Yeah, so the reason that you hate them is because you can't listen to them while you're on Zoom calls and doing a lot of other things. So
Correct.
I don't like them as much as messages, typically, because a message you can read, you can reply. Like even when you're just chatting about Carney Hatch Lane, I was tuning in because I want to send a photo of that steel under the chimney to my dad. But I could reply to people on WhatsApp, right? So it's very, 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 very efficient, and we love efficiencies in our businesses. But one thing that is my absolute pet peeve is still the traditional phone call where you just miss each other over and over again for days. And it's this voice clip is to replace that, because just send me a voice clip. Just if you've got something to ask me or tell me, WhatsApp it to me. But a lot of people then don't want to go to the effort of sending a long message because they want to explain it on the phone. Send me a voice clip. And then what you're basically doing is, rather than if you picture, I call it the stars aligning of diaries. If you've got someone's really busy diary and someone else's really busy diary, and you pull it all together and there's a glimpse of availability in 3 days' time, you might speak on the phone then, but those 3 days are completely wasted. Whereas a voice clip ensures that the person recording the voice clip gets the message to the other person at their soonest availability, and then they can voice clip back. So you're always making compounding speed on communication. So I absolutely think that, and it really, really, really annoys me, because I'll get like 3 missed calls from someone and I would just text them, send me a voice clip, because for me and you to be both free at the same time is clearly quite difficult. And as a result, we just don't speak. And then it just drifts, and weeks go by and it's painful. So yeah, that's why I love voice clips. My preference is definitely messaging, short messaging. No, hi, how are you? What are you doing? Just to the point, get a message over. But then voice clips, I do think are really valuable. So anyone out there that calls someone 3 times and then fancies, I'll give them a ring tomorrow, just send a voice clip.
Yeah, debate us down in the comments if you've got alternative views. Cool. I've actually just come off a session with one of our mentees. We've had quite a few sessions with the same mentee over the last couple of weeks, because they're going through a difficult patch with their businesses. They're about to actually start and embark on numerous developments, and wanted their hands held to give some insight into how it should progress, or how it could progress, the lessons that we've learned that we can pass on, the risks that they should be looking out for. And to basically set them on the right path, in the hope that it's a much smoother ride for them, because development is very, very difficult. There's also a bit of business mentoring and coaching within that process. It's not all about the project itself, but it's how are you, utilizing Xero, for example, for your accounting software. How are you setting up your joint venture structure, your shareholders agreements, and how are you managing the business alongside the property project itself? If that type of handholding is of interest to you, we do offer one-to-one business coaching, mentoring. The packages are on the screen. Ultimately, it's £300 plus VAT as an ad hoc kind of hour session. Most people that we work with buy a package of 4-hour sessions. So that could be 2 2-hour sessions or 4 1-hour sessions for £1,000 plus VAT. And then if you really want to sit down with both Jack and I for half a day to really look at your business, pick things apart, put it back together, set you off on the right road, then there is a bigger package that can be bought where you can do that. So yeah, all of that information is on our website. If anyone's interested in specific one-to-one coaching, then do reach out, because we love it. It's always great to give back, but also kind of we learn a lot through the process as well, and it keeps us sharp and on our game. So yeah, do get in touch if you want some mentorship. Okay, so I've got a rant, not necessarily around building control as well, another rant, but what the biggest reason that we've had a lot of views recently across our platforms is for one specific short and reel that we launched, which was about the Keir Starmer just get on with it developers. And I talked about this probably 3 weeks ago. It frustrates me or annoys me that I feel like we give huge value in these episodes every week of really practical, useful things that are really, for a lot of developers, for a lot of property developers and entrepreneurs and business owners, you pay a lot of money for this free stuff, and we do it for free. Yet the thing that goes viral the most and gets the most views across our platforms is me having a rant, or talking about politics, talking about something that's really controversial out there, which was exactly what Keir Starmer shouted about. And it's frustrating because we could be a bit more ranty, we could be a bit more polarizing, but that's not generally who we are. So to see all of those things getting viral and getting a lot more views than we normally get is great, because it does bring more eyes. But we want this valuable content to be the stuff that's shared and commented on. So I guess my ask for you is that we get more comments, we get more people sharing the valuable content that we put out there, so that more people get to see it. Rant over on that front. Now a business control rant, a building control rant. So building control, and I've said this numerous times over the last couple of months, it is the most difficult building control process I've ever seen in the last 15 years. Gone are the days where you could ring up the building control officer, have a genuine conversation around what needs to get done. They say, oh, you need to do X, Y, and Z. You say, sure, I'll get that done. Speak to the builder, get it sorted. The process now is so long-winded, and the reason that it spurred kind of putting this in there this week is that we are using Stroma building control on one of our sites, and I will sort of name and shame to a certain degree. We use them on numerous sites. Jack's using them on some of his sites, and I've used them before. And they merged with JHAI about 2 years ago, which was actually one of the other building control bodies that we used. And I know sometimes it can come down to the individual building control officer that you're working with, not necessarily just the company. But this seemed to be a company-wide policy that was being pushed towards us, and it's this: the building control officer would not come out for a final inspection on our Marlow site until they had received all of the documentation, all of the certificates, all of the gas certs, all of the noise tests, all of the flow rate tests, all of the electrical certificates, all of that stuff they wanted in hand before booking in a final inspection. Now, I think this is ludicrous and a waste of every single person's time within the process. What should really happen is that they get called out and they have the final inspection. I guarantee that they will also pick up some things that last minute that need to be rectified or sorted out. So my process would be, get them out when it's pretty much finished, but we know they're going to pick up on a few bits. They pick up on a few bits. In the meantime, you are in the background gathering all of those certificates, getting the final sign-off, the post-completion test coming. But within that 2 to 3 week time frame, you already know what building control want from a final kind of snagging items perspective. Yet we're now wasting 2 to 3 weeks of gathering all of this information, submitting it to them, for them to review it, to then come to site to do a final inspection, when I guarantee on that final inspection, they'll also find more things. So you're just wasting everyone's time. It's not an efficient process to go down, yet this now seems to be standard practice. I'd love to understand down in the comments, like, who else is getting this with their own, with the building control bodies that they're using. Because I've talked about Salus before, who are St Andrews Court's building control officers. We've had different issues with them from a fire perspective and other issues which we talked about in the past. But they were happy to come out, do a final inspection, still give us a list of things that we need to address, because there always will be. But in that time frame, we've then got all of the other post-completion tests and certificates that we're now that we can submit and gather. Yet the process that Stroma seem to want to go through is just, as far as I'm concerned, ludicrous. The other issue that we do have on another site is that the senior officer is on holiday for 2 weeks, and we are at a point where all of the information is now being provided, yet the sort of trainee junior officer is saying they have to wait for their senior officer to come back to sign it off. Those 2 weeks might cost us 20 grand in interest costs. It is ludicrous that nobody else within the business can pick up that file, see that we've signed off the relevant outstanding items, and sign it off themselves. I just feel like the whole system now has become, again, another over-regulated, long, drawn-out process that is done for the right reasons in terms of safety and compliance, but the process is so incredibly broken that it's costing us developers tens of thousands, if not sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds in delays. Rant over. Jack, you wanted to say something as well?
Yeah, I'll read you an email I sent to the same building control body.
Was it? Okay.
3 days ago.
Yeah.
Hi all. It's been 5 days since I sent my email. We've tried to call you numerous times without success. Not really sure why you have an office number, as it's impossible to get hold of anyone at Stroma. Can you get back to my email today? That was 3 days ago. Sent an email yesterday. Hi, such and such. 7 days and counting, ... since the original email. Then I sent another one today. Yeah, I mean, at the end of a project, you're just trying to get it done, and there's just lack of urgency. And interestingly, where you talk about the legislation, I watched the Grenfell documentary on Netflix, I think on Sunday night, or like a few days ago, and I completely agree that it's insane that cladding was even able to be put on a building. Like it's just when you know, that documentary might be slightly one-sided, but I mean, even still, even if I heard the defendant's case, I'd still be saying probably the same thing. But when I watched it, I was like, but this is just what's frustrating about this is, yes, fire, health and safety is probably the most prevalent thing that needs addressing. But there's loads of things that I don't think are important that are now being over-regulated, that aren't as important. That you can get by with, X amount of lighting or whatever it may be. So so I kind of feel like they hit everything with regulation when actually let's just get really good at the really important things and health and safety and making sure people aren't eating plasma or getting burnt alive, and let's fucking kill all the bats.
I think there's the new compliance process as well at the end of a project, which requires the client, the principal designer and the principal contractor to sign a document that almost kind of relieves building control of any responsibility anyway. So they cause all this issue and then ultimately push it over to those three parties to say, well, you have to be satisfied that everything's been built to building control and you're compliant. And that's effectively those people are the ones that are actually taking the responsibility. And I got frustrated when at the start of a project, one of my team from Aura signed one of our projects as the principal designer. Now it's come to the end of the project. It's somebody else now signing on behalf of Aura as the principal designer. Yet, because it's a different name, as in the person, we spent a couple of days going back and forth on emails with me arguing the toss to say, why should it matter who from my company is signing as the principal designer? It's the company that's taking the responsibility, not the person. And they didn't accept that. They made me sign another form to transfer the PD role to the new person, even though it's the same company, just different name. I mean, it just feels absolutely ludicrous that we're going through these types of things and wasting days and days and days, if not weeks or months, when it's costing us tens of thousands of pounds in holding costs and interest costs to get these things done. So, frustrating. Part of the process now, I think we just need to factor in a lot longer to, instead of it being weeks to sign off, it's now months, which is very frustrating. Anyway, next point. If you enjoy these rants, if you enjoy the value that you get from these podcasts, please do rate us on Spotify, leave a review on Apple. It does go a massive long way to helping the algorithm realize that there's good shit here. And we do launch the audio format of these video podcasts every Monday at 5 a.m. So the video podcast you can watch on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, sometimes Instagram, if I remember to go live. And And then on audio format, we're on all of the platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, Amazon Music, all of your standard platforms. We will be found. Our follower base on Spotify is really, really increasing now, which is amazing. Like, it's almost, I'd say, doubled in the last probably month or so, which is great. It means that we're getting out there. Our viewership is increasing. And yeah, we always ask for just, if you're getting value from it, share it with just one person, reshare it across social media. If you took value from it, and like and comment on everything that you see. Thanks.
I mean, this is why you should be watching, really, because
Speaking of growth,
I mean, Ben monitors this frequently, and I sort of tune in on various changes that have happened over a period of time. I was absolutely amazed at how actual exponential our growth and viewership has been. So just one to say thank you to our listeners, and if there's anything that we can improve or talk more about, please do put it in the comments. I don't think there's really any other, in my opinion, property and YouTube people that you can actually ask your own questions and get them answered. So, I mean, it's kind of like free mentoring, but we obviously love doing that, because if you have that question, I'm sure one other person does as well. So we want to be useful. But anyway, so Ben shared, and if you can visualize this, you can see it. On the 6th of May, 2025, we had 125,000 views on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And then so that's really only well, it's literally like a couple, like not even a couple of months ago. So 100. So and this goes to show the exponential growth of having a channel, consistency, and delivering. And actually, someone asked me the other day, "You've been doing YouTube and podcasts for a while. I don't think they think we're Diary the CEO level, but they sort of said, have you got any advice?" And I just said, consistency. When you sometimes feel like, why are we doing this? You know, it's been a bit quiet on the Western front. Keep to it. Keep producing. Keep building that viewership. So then on the 11th of June, Ben shared that we hit 150,000 views by the 11th of June. So basically within 4 weeks, we had hit, you know, our growth. It was 25. It's almost like 20% growth within a month of that previous shot of growth. And then again, Ben then went on to share in our group that essentially 13 days later, so 2 weeks later, we hit another 25,000 in views. So you can kind of see that hockey stick effect of everyone really appreciating what we're doing. And, you know, huge thanks to our listeners. But you know, we've got the more people that view, the more, you know, Q&As we'll get, the more I suppose accurately to what everyone's requiring, we can start recording this content and continue doing what we're doing. So that was what I want to share. Pretty crazy, really.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. And for those that are wondering, we talked about the monetization on YouTube a couple of weeks ago. We are at a stonking £11.86.
Wow!
For the last,
we're almost to break even.
That was started in, when did that start? 7th of June. So 20 days ago.
So that makes our hourly rate probably what, like 20p?
Yeah, I was going to say a Freddo, but you can't buy a Freddo for less than probably £1 nowadays. So, but good either way. You know, it's a tiny bit of money, and it will increase. But for us, it's more about seeing that growth on the channels, and we're starting to get a lot more traction, we feel. And just a quick plug, because I don't think it's in this deck, but if you want to be part of these podcasts, we do have a sponsorship pack that we can send out to you. I think we're going to be probably about 3 or 4 weeks away from announcing and launching our first couple of sponsors on this podcast, which I'm super excited about. We're just tying up some of the final loose ends. I mean, Jack might not even know about this, but if you are interested in, you know, being on the slides, getting you know, dedicated slots to discuss your business, getting out on our email newsletters to circa 5,000, you know, developers, investors, suppliers, then reach out, because you know, Jack and I give this information for free. It would be great to kind of get some contribution and get some payment towards all of this free value that we're giving to increase the production, increase the you know, the output, and give back more. Cool. We finished a recent project at Aura. I think we've got another one coming up soon that's being finished, and we are just starting to get on site on another 2 projects. It'd be great to see those projects progress. But this was a relatively small project for us, sort of ground floor extension and rearranging the layouts plus the interior design. So it's great to see some of Gabby's work come to life. These photos look amazing, and this is the type of stuff that we do day in, day out. I mentioned last week that Aura going through a difficult patch in terms of conversion of new work, so we are keen to do more and more of this, keen to work with developers like yourself if you are listening, to add value to your schemes. So reach out if you're interested in working with an architectural practice that kind of gets the development side of stuff. We are developers. I am a developer in my own right. So sort of understanding how the commercial aspect of things need to be understood and designs need to be appropriate to that commercial aspect, then reach out, because that's something we are extremely good at. Exit strategies are always key, and it sounds like you've had a bit of a dilemma or changed and pivoted.
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, every time that I've asked the question, like if there's one bit of advice you could give anyone starting out or in property, it's always have multiple exits. The last thing you want to be doing is building a bespoke product and then just actually getting caught with the market or movement. It's really common that if people struggle to sell things, they rent things out. Anyway, this is an example of multiple exit options that you've got to keep open. So this project is a flip that we did in Caversham. We bought really well. We've renovated it really nicely. The agents can believe the finish. We're not quite getting the values that we'd hoped for because it's got a very compromised garden. You might actually be able to see from that photo, there's a building behind it, and to the left of it, there's a car garage. So we're stuck with 2 choices, right? So we either reduce the price and reduce the profit and sell it, and we're fortunate that it would still be in a position where we've made a profit, or we actually take a look at the market. And I think the market is not that hot at the moment. I think that if I was looking to buy a personal home, now would be the time to be buying it. I'd probably buy something on a 2-year fix and then refi it out. And I think the market's really good for a buyer at the moment. I think it's a buyer's market. And as a result of that, it's probably not the best time to be selling this flip. But we can. So it's kind of like we're judging this opportunity cost, get it out the door, get it sold. But the benefit with this house is it's currently a 4-bedroom house with a massive front living space. And for very, very little cost, we could convert this into a 6-bedroom HMO, and it's in a phenomenal location. So we're currently in this way up where I think it will probably value up at 675 to 700 as a HMO. It's currently on the market for 650. So we either drop the price, take the profit and move on, or we put it onto the balance sheet, take quite high cash flow with it and pivot into HMO. And we could probably have this converted and let within like 4 to 6 weeks. So we're currently in this. We've pushed it to the investor and let them know that this is what we want to do. They might just turn around and say, like, I want my money out. And then we either need to replace their investment with a HMO investor or sell it and crystallize that cash out. But it's that pivot and being able to do that it will actually turning a potential liability immediately into an asset that we can keep in the portfolio. And to put it in a bit of context, if we were to sell it at 600K, we'd probably walk away with, maybe 20, 30 grand profit. Which isn't bad, given obviously if we'd have sold at 650, it would have been more like 70, 80K profit. And if we refinanced it at 675, 700, we refinance and pull out anywhere between 20 and 60K cash, but the equity stays in the asset and the net cash flow is somewhere around 1,700, 1,800 per month. So a really good asset to have in the portfolio. And we've done this with quite a few properties before in Central Suite. So it's just something that you guys should always consider. And actually, this isn't just by luck. We had the numbers for a 6-bed HMO before we bought it. We had the numbers for a flip before we bought it. We knew that we could pivot in anywhere. We facilitated that with ease. So just a bit of word of advice. Look at that project that you're bidding on. Look at that thing and go, well, what if we don't sell the units? What if we don't do this? What if we don't do that? What are our other options? And that is how you protect having multiple exit opportunities. Obviously, being a bit more creative, other exit opportunities could be let to the council, could be fill it as a HMO and then sell it as an investment. Other options could be, single let. There's tons of things that you could be considering. And that's just, protecting the exit and having more than one exit strategy possible.
Nice. Always important. On to some Q&A. Some of these are from last week. Jordan, actually, you're top of the list. We've got some more lined up for next week, but we didn't have time to sort of plan for them and add them, and we are running short on time. So Jordan says that he'll be booking a one-to-one soon. That's great to hear. Would you buy a part complete property at auction in receivership with parts subject to occupation unknown? How would you resolve that? He says he's planning to go around and have a look and try and knock on the door, but assume it's a dodgy tenancy or squatters. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably safe to assume. Occupancy unknown just screams they've got people in there that they don't want in there. So would we buy it? I mean, there's so many variables around that. Yes, you'd buy anything at the right price. If you've got time to wait, if you understand the eviction process, if you fully understand the current situation of the occupation, then there's going to be a roadmap to resolve those issues and move things forward. But without having that information, it's going to be way more risky to buy it. Not saying that we wouldn't buy it, but it would be more risky. We'd have to I'd say know a lot more information before kind of being able to answer that fully, because it might come down to, is it at a level? Are you buying it at a level that just is an absolute no-brainer? You've got some cash to sit there to resolve the issues. Is there any other planning gain on it? Is there any other value add, for example? What's the history with the building control and the warranty provider to date? How part complete is it? If it has got to the point where it's got kind of first fix electrics to the point where you're about to put switch plates on and normally would test and commission and you're all good to go, that could be a massive issue, because no one's going to come in and sign off that work. And the likelihood is you're going to have to rip it all out and go again. So, if it's at structure level, waiting to be fitted out, that's a lot easier for you. Whereas if it's almost finished and you're then having to do lots of investigation work to understand actually what has been installed because you've got no information on it, then that's going to cost you a shitload of money to resolve. So loads of parts to this, to be honest. And those are my thoughts. Jack?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, everything comes at a cost. Would you buy Buckingham Palace for £1 if the king was a squatter? Yeah, you would. I mean, it's really, 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 really difficult. Would you do this deal? Would you do this deal? There's the most straightforward PD schemes that I wouldn't do because the price is wrong, and there's the most complex tenant squatting deals that I would do if you can see the sort of root cause and profit to be made there. So for sure, I would be a little bit hesitant with. I feel that the auctions can be great, but often for the people that don't understand them very well, they can actually be traps. So I'd just be really, really cautious of that, because you're expediting your knowledge spend time with speed, because there's an obvious reason that, if something's got an issue, the best thing to do is try and sell it in auction. And if that doesn't fail, you haven't really lost anything. So I'd just be cautious around that point and try and maybe buy yourself the time that you need.
Nice. Jordan also asks, what's your opinion on chipping the price at the last minute, even if the deal would work without this? I've got a relatively strong opinion on this, in that I actually had this conversation with Harry this morning. It's not something we like to do. If there's valid reason, i.e. the property itself or the site, you come up against legal issues that you weren't aware of, then those absolutely need to be factored in. To chip a price at the last minute because ultimately that the seller is probably not going to find a better deal elsewhere, so he's likely to accept it, is not really how we like to operate. And I think we're young, we're ambitious, we want to grow, and if you're doing that on projects where you want to build a relationship with an agent because then they're going to give you 4, 5, 6 more projects after this, it doesn't really bode well or look well for you, look good on you. So it's not something that we do that much at all. We know of some developers that absolutely do this as a standard practice.
Yeah, we do,
And we hear about those people through agents that we're working with, because their view on working with those types of developers are that it's not really that fun. So we don't want to be that person.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add, if you're chipping just for the sake of chipping, that's actually an element, that's just your character. As Ben said, towards the end of a purchase, there is, two things that you can think about. Is the chip because of the asset, like Ben said, and is that a hereditary problem with the site, or is it with you? And if it's with you, how well is that going to go in the market space? I'm not a massive believer that that's an essential thing to be doing. And ideally, if we do have to review the price, it's for fair reason. And actually, if they were to go to sell the property on to anyone else, they'll have the same problem too. I've actually, when we bought the bank, Ben, I know that we discovered that there was a leak in the roof, and a couple of tiles have slipped. But it's kind of like picking your battles. Is it worth quabbling over maybe a few £1,000s to repair that, when actually we could get good continuity of sales through that agent and seller as well in the future? So I think it swings and roundabouts, and we actually, may or may not, but we're selling a property at the moment. The buyer had a valuation that was 350. We're selling it for 400, and they've sort of come back, shared that that's the case, but haven't been that diligent with what the chip is. They're not in a position where they've progressed very well in legals. So it's kind of like the point where if you're just unorganized and come across sloppy, then that's quite clear. But if you're very organized, you've done what you need to do, you've done what you can, you've done assessments that they might not have done before and found something out that they might not have found out before. And then you've got to, share that risk. One example that I actually really love is that a friend of mine was in an incident in Thailand, where he opened a car door and a moped went into the car door. So there's 3 parties involved. There's the passenger of the taxi driver whose door is now damaged, and the moped rider. And the way that they sorted it out is they went into court. They all worked out the total cost of damage. So emotional damage, car door damage, whatever it may be. And then they split it up into who was responsible for what, in percentages. So the taxi driver should have warned him getting out of the car. So he's 40% responsible. The moped rider was driving too close and too far, so he's 40% responsible. And then they split it all up fairly. And the key point I'm getting at here is every transaction has to be fair, and there is relevant fairness that could be shared across any transaction. So as long as you're fair, we've got to make money. We're not in this to buy something because we love it. We're commercialized, so we've got to make money from an acquisition and delivery. But equally, we can't screw over a landowner, and I would say that's not a great way to proceed.
Nice. And one final thing, I put a screenshot of from our YouTube studio, which shows some of the comments that we've been getting on that Keir Starmer House Builders Get On With It short. And if this is just to say, go and have a look, because it's quite fun to read. I get stuck in every now and again, and I'm very much I rarely comment on sort of social media, so it's very abnormal for me to kind of sit there and respond to comments, but some I do, and I have to, because it's just so funny. But the only thing we should be building is prisons for our treasonous politicians and officials who covered up the grooming gang scandal. Everything political like this, people go off on one, and there's some hilarious comments within that reel. So do go and take a look if you want a little bit of a laugh. But on that note, we've gone slightly over. But hopefully you found it valuable. If you have, please like, comment, share, do all that good stuff, and have a great weekend. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.